Over the Hedge is the 2006 animated movie by DreamWorks, which follows a scheming raccoon who fools a mismatched family of forest creatures into helping him repay a debt of food by invading the new suburban sprawl that popped up while they were hibernating. It was directed by Tim Johnson and Carrie Kirkpatrick and has an A-list cast that includes the talents of Bruce Willis, Gary Shandling, Steve Carell, and many others. The movie is based off a comic strip by the same name. It seems to be an overlooked work in the pantheon of DreamWorks movies, although it's hard to hold a candle to their other classics like Shrek and Megamind. But there was always something about this movie that always stuck out to me. I rewatched this movie recently, and now that I'm older, there's a lot of jokes and messages that completely flew over my head as a kid that I appreciate a lot more as an adult, particularly how this film critiques suburban culture and rapid capitalist consumerism. I know it may seem silly that I am analyzing this deep into an admittedly pretty simple animated kids movie, but it's my channel and I make the rules. I'm going full English teacher and trying to find out why the curtains are blue. Also, all art is subjective and I want to add my 2 cents onto this film. To me, there's 2 main themes at play in this movie, those being family and the cost of consumerism. Family is the one that takes center stage and is the driving force for our main characters, and is the subject of their character arcs. But consumerism is the external force that gives our characters a problem to overcome, and kicks off the story, as the inciting incident for this movie is when our main character, RJ, is forced to find food for a bear after he accidentally destroys his stash of junk food while trying to rob him. When we are introduced to the other characters like Vern and Hammy and the gang, they are all just waking up from their hibernation. And when they wake, they discover that suburbs have been built where their forests used to be. The forest is where they forage for food, and now most of it has been taken away by humans, and this is where RJ comes in. He is accustomed to the human world, and shows this family of animals the way of the new industrial world. This is where we get my favorite scene of the film, and the scene that best shows this theme of consumerism. While giving the animals a tour of the human world, he explains that the human's whole social structure and culture revolves around food. As RJ puts it,
"We eat to live. These guys live to eat."
We have devices to summon food, to ship food, to deliver food, devices when we eat too much food or feel guilty about the food we've eaten. As RJ sees it, we worship food. For humans, enough is never enough, and in places like the suburbs, we are just throwing food away because we have an excess of it. This scene is the best example of this anti-consumerism on display. As the film goes on and the movie focuses less on this theme, it focuses more on the action and silly comedy, which I can't fault the film on since it is marketed towards kids, and that's really what they want to see. But even then, there are still a lot more aspects of the film that are ripe for analysis. In his article on Over the Hedge titled Getting Under Over the Hedge, Bruce Peabody compares many of the themes in this film to the works of 18th century philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. To quote Peabody's article, according to Rousseau, civilization comes with great costs. In civil society, we overindulge to demonstrate our wealth and implicit superiority. And as we become increasingly dependent upon the specialized skills and services of others, our bodies and souls turn feeble, timid, servile, and soft. This is an idea that is played with earlier in the film. For humans, consuming more than we need is a way for us to show our wealth and our superiority, whether it's through us overindulging in food or buying a giant SUV that only one person is going to drive. RJ is a perfect reflection of this as he kicks off the plot because he is overindulging in the spuddies. The whole reason he is caught by the bear is because he was trying to get just one more can of chips. At first, he has more than enough food to feed himself, but his greed overtakes him and he has to get just one more can of chips even though he doesn't need it. This is something that he makes fun of the humans for later in the film. They eat and consume way more than they need to, yet he himself is guilty of this fault. This is taken even further when he gets his place with the animals all tricked out with these cool human gadgets, like the TV. He doesn't need all these commodities, but he indulges in them anyway because he sees that's how humans show their superiority. But these gadgets are also the source of his character arc. While flipping through the TV, dialogue is played that makes RJ realize what a bad person he is for tricking the only animals that have ever shown him love.
We now return to A Scoundrel Among Us.
RJ may have all these food and trinkets, but it's worthless if he doesn't have a family that he loves to share them with. He could end up like the bear Vincent, who acts as the embodiment of greed and a dark reflection of what RJ can become if he should continue down this path. In Jillian Hinkins' article, Biting the Hand That Feeds, Consumerism, Ideology, and Recent Animated Film for Children, they analyze this choice RJ's character makes when he's constantly punished for choosing the extra spuddies when he clearly doesn't need them. Quote, The message is clear: succumbing to greed leads on to greater and greater overconsumption, with desire far outweighing actual need and resulting in punishment. We see the main villains of this film being punished for their greed. Vincent the Bear, Gladys Sharp, and the Verminator all get fried because of their greed. This greed looks different character to character, whether it's a greed for junk food or a greed to control every aspect of the suburbs. On a side note, I think it's hilarious that Gladys goes to prison for violating the Geneva Conventions. That is just... that's ridiculous. Also in Bruce Peabody's article, he makes the great point that the hedge represents a choice. It's a barrier between the state of nature, which the characters start out in, with Vern, and contemporary social order, which Suburbia and RJ introduces them to. Vern and RJ demonstrate these two conflicting ideas, as they try to sway the other animals into their line of thought. Do they stay in their old ways of nature with Vern, or embrace the new way of life with RJ? In the end, the animals return to their original state of nature, back to the ways of foraging in the forest. However, they have fundamentally changed. They've let RJ into their group, which is their connection to the humans and Suburbia. Through this, we can infer that they've adopted some of the practices of gathering food through humans, as evident by the end credit scene where RJ is showing the animals how to get food out of the vending machine. They may have returned to nature, but they'll never truly be free of the capitalist society that humans have crafted in the new world. This is very relatable to many of us viewers, because no matter how hard we try to escape it, we are never free of the chains of capitalism. Anyways, how about that soundtrack? By far my favorite aspect of this film is the music. The score for this film was done by Rupert Grayson Williams, with Hans Zimmer serving as the executive music producer. This score stands out because it goes way harder than it has any right to go. However, my favorite part is definitely the songs done by Ben Folds. Ben Folds contributed 3 original songs that he wrote for this film, in addition to an updated rendition of his song Rocking the Suburbs, and a cover of The Clash's Lost in the Supermarket. The songs that Ben Folds wrote for this film are amazing. Each of them perfectly capture the right tone for each scene and what each scene is going for, whether it's a fun heist scene or a somber character reflection. I love animated movies that came out during this period of time because they all feature a famous musician writing original music that goes so hard. Just look at this playlist, banger after banger, link in the description. Also, I can't play these songs due to copyright, so I'll include the soundtrack in the description as well, which you should definitely check out. The original Rockin' the Suburbs has a very different message than the one that was rewritten for this film. This song was originally parroting nu metal and rap metal bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit. Just look at the opening lyrics of the original. Let me tell y'all what it's like being male, middle class, and white. It's a hilarious song, but it doesn't quite fit the theme of Over the Hedge and does not have family-friendly language. So Ben Folds rewrote the lyrics, changing nearly everything except the hook and keeping the same satirical edge. My favorite lyrics are in the second verse. We drive our cars every day to and from work both ways, so we make just enough to pay to drive our cars to work each day. This joke is in the same vein as one earlier in the film about how humans have these giant SUVs just for one person to drive. It also makes fun of the fact about how in modern suburban society, we have crafted these communities where driving a one-person vehicle is the only way to get to work, since there's often very little public transportation and there's not many walkable communities, especially in a country like the United States where our culture and identity is so intertwined with our own personal automobiles. There's also lyrics in the chorus which are around the block just one more time, because I can't tell which house is mine. As is the case with many suburbs, they all have cookie-cutter houses that look exactly the same, so there's no individuality and everything is uniform. It reminds me of a great visual gag early in the film where we see a sprawl of the suburbs and it's just the repeating landscape of the same house over and over. The addition of the Clash cover is also genius, as it perfectly represents the themes of this movie. This song comes from one of the greatest albums of all time, The Clash's 1979 London Calling. Personally, this is one of my favorite tracks off the album, and it's about the singer dealing with a world that is becoming more and more commercialized and with rampant consumerism. The singer of the song shares a lot of the same feelings as our main character RJ. He tries to fill his life with all these products that society and civilization has pushed on him, but the only thing that leaves a lasting impact is the loneliness created by the consumer society and its empty values. Also, there's literally this line in the song which is just too perfect not to include. We had a hedge back home in the suburbs, over which I never could see. The music for this film is just perfect and complements the themes so well. While researching this video, I found a lot of people who thought the message of this film was a bit hypocritical, since this film is mocking the same tactics that it employs itself. When this movie came out, it had a lot of cross advertisements with a lot of different companies, partnering a lot with Walmart to promote the film. I mean, we literally got Hammy driving the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. There's one particular review from Chrissy Lemire at Foster's Daily Democrat that I think is a little too harsh, and there's a quote towards the end of it I wanted to include. Quote, "If Over the Hedge aims solely to entertain, it does so in a way that's mildly amusing but mostly hack-eyed." Hack-eyed. Hack-eyed? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Hackneyed.
If it aims to instruct, it weakens its own argument with the plethora of product tie-ins. Whether you buy into what Over the Hedge is selling, the joke's on you! I agree with these criticisms to some extent. Yes, it does feel ironic and hypocritical that they are using these characters to push more products on the consumer, but it doesn't entirely discredit the point the film is trying to make. To me, this critique is giving a bit of this meme. I mean, this is an animated kids movie. Did you really expect them not to do any brand tie-ins or sell marketable plushies? The movie can critique society while still participating in society. Over the Hedge is the classic case of a movie being good, but not great. This movie has its fair share of flaws that keep it from being an all-time classic, but there are also a lot of fun scenes and great moments that make this an entertaining and enjoyable film. The box office and critical reception also reflect this sentiment. It boasts a decent 75% on Rotten Tomatoes and a solid return of $339 million worldwide gross, meaning the film wasn't bad enough to be discarded, but not quite good enough to warrant a sequel. I believe this lack of a sequel is what caused this film to be so overlooked in comparison to other DreamWorks IP, since it's just a one-off story. Also, it wasn't a box office bomb, so it never really got the status of an underrated cult film, meaning this movie has been in limbo in regards to its pop culture impact, and why it may not be talked about as much as other animated films. Over the Hedge is a pretty solid kids film that pokes fun at a lot of the more ridiculous aspects of suburban life and overconsumption in the modern age. These themes found within the film have a surprising amount to say about this, which is also beautifully presented through the music by Ben Folds. Although it may have its flaws, Over the Hedge is still a fun time with a pretty cool message. So, what are your thoughts on Over the Hedge? Are there any other kids movies with deep messages that you like? Let me know in the comments below. This has been Tom from Eisenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.